Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I'm here with my buddy Jamie, who is passed out asleep over there to talk about my reading intentions for 2022. I'm really excited about this. You may remember from last year, I decided not to do a reading goal, and I kind of thrived under that in all of 2021, and I did not want to set reading goals for myself, but I also think it's important to sort of challenge yourself a little bit. So I started seeing people saying their reading intentions for 2022, and I thought that was a much better way of phrasing it for what I do. I specifically took this idea from Erica at The Broken Spine. I'll put a link to her channel in the description box down below, and I like this because it gives me some things to work on without setting goals, and I'm found a way not to make it super complicated, because that is exactly what I did in 2020. I had success with a reading goal in 2019, and that made me try it again in 2020, and I made it super complicated, and it was too multifaceted and complicated, so I ended up abandoning the goal by the end of the year. And then last year, I didn't have a goal at all. The only thing I did was that I went with Montana Book Company's reading challenge for 2021, and I want to do that again because some of my favorite reads for last year were discovered as part of that, and they released their 2022 reading challenge. I'm going to talk through, this is my scrap copy where I wrote down a bunch of ideas, and we're going to go through that a little bit later because a bunch of people on Twitter said that they were going to participate, and on Instagram as well. But we're having a little bit of trouble with some of the categories, and Montana Book Company had a lot of thoughts about how people could meet those prompts, but I have some as well, and I'm also going to put a resource guide in the description box down below with some links for ways that you get, or lists of books that will help meet some of the categories. But before we do that, I will also put a link to the 2022 reading challenge for the Montana Book Company in the description box down below, because a lot of people were asking about the 2022 one and where you could find it online. So I have a link in the description box down below. But before we get to that, I want to talk about some other things. Obviously, the first reading intention I have is that I'm going to do the 2022 reading challenge from Montana Book Company. I had bad luck with reading challenges and like bingo cards, things like that in the past, because a lot of them are really specific in certain areas. Like I've seen a couple that will say like, read a book in the same spot for 3 hours. Well, I have dogs that might need to go to the bathroom. Please don't make me sit in one spot for 3 hours. Or read a book with a blue door on the cover. And it's like, please don't make me find a book with a blue door on the cover. So I don't like that. I think what's good about the Montana Book Company's challenge is that they are specific, they are challenging, but there are a bunch of different ways you can meet them. Like when I start going through my list, you'll see I have books in mind that could meet multiple different prompts, and I could approach them from a bunch of different ways. So we'll talk about that later, but that's my first reading intention for 2022. I'm going to do the Montana Book Company's 2022 reading challenge. My second reading intention for 2022 is that I want to work on my Pulitzer Prize project. I decided that I was going to read every Pulitzer Prize winner for fiction, I think in 2019. And I haven't made a lot of progress. In 2019, I read a supplemental book for the project that was supposed to go along with reading the first book that ever won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, but I didn't read the book that actually won. So in 2019, I only managed to read a supplementary book. In 2020, I only managed to read one book for the project. It was Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. Then last year, I only read one book for the project, and that was Gone with the Wind. So I haven't made a lot of progress, and part of that is because I keep putting things in my own way and almost like putting up barriers that make it a little more complicated to focus on that. So this year, I really want to make some progress on that, and I'm not going to put metrics on it. I was really tempted to do that, but I figured that's just going to make it more complicated. It's going to potentially set me up to fail. My original thought was I should read one Pulitzer Prize book a month, but I don't want to do that to myself. So I just need to increase the amount that I work on that in 2022, which is going to be easy because in 2 years, I've only read one book in each year. In fact, I was originally thinking that I would try to meet a lot of the prompts on the 2022 reading challenge by doing Pulitzer Prize books. Though given the way some of the prompts work, it could be a little bit difficult, but we'll talk about that later. So I just want to make some progress on my Pulitzer Prize project. And again, given my track record on working on that project, should be very doable, but we'll see how that goes. My next reading intention for 2022 is to transition away from Goodreads into the Storygraph. I have felt icky using Goodreads pretty much since it was purchased by Amazon, but for a really long time, there just was no alternative. And therefore, I haven't been able to cut the cord and move away from it. And there is a really good reading community on Goodreads, and I didn't want to give that up. So what I told myself was that I would just never connect my account to Amazon and try to minimize any kind of exposure to Amazon like that. But I just feel icky using it. Now the Storygraph does exist. It got out of beta last year. It is still very much in development. So there's a couple of areas in which there's room to grow, but it has gotten so much improved. It wasn't bad when I first started, but I don't want to imply that it was. But it has improved so much since I first joined. And I have total faith that it will be a perfect Goodreads replacement. They also have a really good community tab now. I'm going to put a link to the Storygraph in the description box down below. I encourage you to sign up. You don't have to give up your Goodreads right now. I'm not going to give up my Goodreads right now. I'm going to start a transition away from it, basically. So I'm not going to cut the cord immediately, but by the end of the year, I hope to fully have moved over to Storygraph. And I'm not saying I'm going to close out my account on Goodreads. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with it, and I haven't decided if I'm going to track all of my reading on Goodreads. I have so far this year. I think that's something I might give up as well, because Storygraph will do your reading challenge for this year. You know, the amount of books you set as a goal, the amount of pages that you set as a goal. I could even set up my Pulitzer Prize project for myself as a reading challenge. So I am seriously considering not posting any updates to Goodreads anymore. By the end of the year, that will be the case, but I could be doing it any earlier. So if you would like to continue to get reading updates on a social media site, I'd encourage you to check out the Storygraph. My link to Storygraph is in the description box as well, in that little section at the bottom that is appended to every video that I upload. I deleted my Goodreads profile link and put in the Storygraph instead. So feel free to find me there, create a bigger sense of community, because it's only going to grow. Storygraph is also really responsive to feedback. So I encourage you to send any if you have any. I think it's going to be a really good community and certainly a very good alternative to Goodreads. And really what hastened my interest in moving away from Goodreads was that I read Danny Kane's How to Resist Amazon and Why, and it talked about Amazon alternatives. So that is something that I really want to do this year, to try to move away from that. My next reading intention for 2022 is to focus on other parts of the LGBTQ spectrum in writing. One of my reading goals in 2019, one of the ones I really succeeded at, was basically the same thing. So I'm not going to make a formal goal around it. And I didn't really then, which is part of why it succeeded so much. I'm really good at the G in LGBTQ literature. I'm not as good as the others. So I really want to increase the amount of those that I read. And I read a lot of gay romances and gay themed YA books and things like that. So I'm going to try to do more lesbian. I haven't really done much of any bisexual literature. So that's going to be I'm going to try to do better on that this year as well. And this is going to tie into my reading challenge as well. Transgender, I've read a bunch. But I really want to increase the representation of the other aspects of the LGBTQ community, because I'm really good at the G and I will continue to be good at the G, but I want to expand out from that a little bit. I think it's only fair. All right, I have 2 more reading intentions for 2022, and then we'll talk about how I'm going to meet my Montana Book Company reading challenge. The next one is I want to be more intentional with book hauls, and this is something I'm already struggling with because I released my most anticipated reads of 2022 this week. And of course, my immediate inclination is to pre-order all of them, put in orders for all of them, and I'm going to try not to do that. So with the ones that are coming out soon, I'm going to wait and see if they become available at my library or if they pop up on any of my subscription apps once they are released. And if they don't, then I will think about ordering them. But it's happened to me a lot in the past where I immediately order everything and then it ends up being available in my library or on a subscription app, and then the book kind of sits, and then sometimes I even end up listening to it on audio on one of my subscription apps anyway. So I really want to be more intentional with the way I spend my money on books. And I'm going to try to find a good balance because I definitely want to support the type of books that I am interested in and the type of authors that I am interested in and the publishers who are willing to put those books out there, and of course, independent bookstores. So I'm going to try to find a balance between those two things, being really intentional with the way I spend my money, but also making sure I support the type of publishing that I would like to see. So we'll see how that goes. Like I said, right now it's a total challenge. I've been thinking all day about pre-ordering 2 books and trying not to do that. So we'll see how it goes. Keep your fingers crossed for me. And then the last reading intention for 2022 that I have is that I want to get back to closed captioning my videos. It's something that I wanted to do last year, had some success with in the first half of the year, and then really dropped off. And basically what I'll say is the reason I started dropping off was that my work schedule really shifted. In the first half of last year, so I live in Mountain Time. My boss is in Pacific Time, and therefore he starts his day an hour later than I usually do. So I was able to film my videos in the morning and then get them about edited before I was starting my workday. And then I could have them uploading. And then in the afternoon, I would just edit the transcript because I was scheduling them for the next day and it would be ready to go. And that was working really well. And then my boss went to the East Coast around the middle of last year, and the whole thing just went out the window because he was starting his day earlier. I lost my ability to film and edit videos in the morning before I started my workday. So everything became sort of like a scramble. And he's been going back and forth between the East Coast and the West Coast. But even when he's on the West Coast, we have people who work with us who are back on the East Coast now. So everything is just a mess. And what ends up happening is I film and edit my video during the workday whenever I have time or breaks and things like that, and then try to upload it. And the end result is that it takes all day for me to get a video filmed, edited, and start uploading. So usually the closed captioning isn't available until the next day. And by then my day has already gotten crazy. So things have been a little inconvenient with that. You don't need to hear all of that information, but point being that's why I stopped doing it. But you know what's really inconvenient? Not being able to participate in YouTube. So I really need to do better about it. And I'm going to try to find ways to fit it back into my schedule because I did see a big difference when I was doing it. When I first started doing it, there were not a lot of people who used closed captioning on my videos. And within 2 months, the percentage of people who were using closed captioning on my videos had, I think, tripled. So it worked. And I would really like to get back to it. And it's something I'm just going to have to try to force myself to do because, again, yes, it's inconvenient for me to try to fit it into my schedule, but it's more inconvenient for the people who can't participate. So I really want to do that. So with that, let's start talking about how I'm going to do my Montana Book Company reading challenge. And we're going to run through it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on all of these because there are a lot of prompts, but I want to go through a couple of them in particular, talk about what I'm thinking about doing for them. And in the description box down below, the links that I am specifically leaving should help point toward, there's an article about LGBTQ fairy tale retellings and an article about LGBTQ mythology books. Both of them from Book Riot. I don't think it's any surprise that when I Googled a bunch of the things that are on this reading challenge, Book Riot came up really quickly. They are very good at representing typically underrepresented authors and categories. For instance, authors of color, LGBTQ authors in books and things like that. So they could potentially be a good resource for you if you need suggestions as well. But the 2 articles down there are from Book Riot about LGBTQ fairy tale retellings and LGBTQ mythology. I also have a link to Coretta Scott King Book Award winners. That is one of the prompts. You have to choose one of them, and the Pacific Northwest Bookseller Association award winners page as well. So those are the links that are down there. Feel free to explore them if you want to look at those. I kind of wanted just resources readily available for anybody who wants to participate. And again, the link to this reading challenge where you can get the PDF from the Montana Book Company website is down below if you would like to check it out. The more people who participate, the better. And I know people from other areas are participating. And Montana Book Company had said that if you participate from a different area and you win, they will take care of you. I believe somebody from the UK is going to participate, and that's really exciting. The more people who participate, the better, because I think it's really interesting to see how people meet all of these prompts. Joel and I had a blast talking about this when the PDF was released. So the first prompt is Octavia Butler title. I've never read Octavia Butler at all. The book that immediately comes to mind for me is Kindred, because I've heard really good things about that one. I've also heard good things about The Parable of the Sower, but I think that was the first book in a series, and I'm not sure I want to commit to a series, although there is a prompt on here for 2 books in a series. So if I read The Parable of a Sower, I always have the option of reading the second book in the series and meeting that other prompt, because I really love having a backup plan. So that could be appealing. But Kindred is the one that I have heard the most about. And if you have thoughts about Octavia Butler books, please let me know which one you would recommend in the comment section down below. The next one is YA or Middle Reader Coretta Scott King Award winner. And again, the link to the winners is in the description box down below. I think this is a good opportunity for me to read a Jacqueline Woodson book. There are, I think, 2 that have won. The one I would probably go with is Brown Girl Dreaming. That's the way I'm thinking about this. And then the third prompt, I love. Book published the year you were born. I immediately knew what I want to do because there was a book tag, I think 3 years ago, that you were supposed to pick. I think it was the Choose the Year book tag, and I chose the year I was born and talked about a bunch of books that were released that year. And I've always remembered that The Women of Brewster Place by Gloria Naylor was published the year I was born. Have a copy on my shelf. It's been on my TBR for ages. So this is a perfect kick in the pants to get to it. So that's my plan. 2021 Booker Prize long list or winner, national or international. I am probably going to do The Promise by Damon Galgut, which was the winner of the national, or the not national, but the regular Booker Prize. The Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead was also on that list. So I could do either one of those and probably be happy with it. Book of short stories with one single author. Lots of different options. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. The next prompt is 2021 National Book Award long list or winner. I'm reading 2 books, or actually I just finished one book and I'm reading another one that would fit that, but I'm probably going to use the one I'm listening to on audio for a different category and just say that Matrix by Lauren Groff. So I've already checked that one off. Done. Yes. Feeling very proud of myself for that. Matrix by Lauren Groff is my National Book Award long list or winner. Author from another continent but not Europe. I love that they added the not Europe, because when you say author from another continent, I feel like I read a lot of North American or European authors. So getting outside of that area is pretty important to me. So I'm really glad that they added that level to the challenge, because it also means I can't take a shortcut if I want to. There are a bunch of authors from other areas I'd like to do. I'm thinking Isabel Allende. I have a copy of one of her books. I've been meaning to get to it for a really long time. But Violets by Kyung-Suk Shin was one of my most anticipated reads of 2021. And so was Solo Dancer by Lee Kotomi, I believe is the name. So I might do one of them for this prompt. There are a couple of authors from Asia that could, and I want to read some more Australian authors as well this year. So lots of different ways, but I'm thinking Violets by Kyung-Suk Shin is probably the one I will do for that one. Now, Pacific Northwest Book Award winner from the last 5 years. Again, the link to the awards page from them is in the description box down below. At a quick look through, there was a book called Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas that looked really interesting. Idaho by Emily Ruskovich was in there, and I've heard good things about that book as well. Cloud Cuckoo Land was a winner. this year. So that would work as well. So I have a couple of different options that I can pull from. Cemetery Boys is on Scribd. I think Cloud Cuckoo Land is on Scribd now as well. So I wouldn't even have to really do a lot of searching for those. That's cool. Fiction or nonfiction anthology with multiple authors. I haven't decided what direction I want to go with that yet. I'll figure it out. A book that's 500 plus pages. This is where the book that I'm listening to on audio is coming into play. It's Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. Perfect fit for that category. Book in translation. Again, I could say Violets by Kyung Suk Shin. I could say Solo Dance. I'm going to say No Such Thing as an Easy Job by Kikuko Tsumura, which was something that I purchased last year and intended to get to. So because it was something from last year, it could also meet another prompt on this. So I feel like it's a perfect fit. A book that will be a film or series in 2022 or later. I don't have an answer for this right now. I'm going to wait and let something inspire me once it happens. Same for YA or adult graphic novel. I have the graphic novel version of Work Like Any Other, and I have a graphic called Paying the Land. Those would be two great options. Otherwise, I'm just going to wait until something inspires me. LGBTQ plus author. Here's where I'm making it complicated. LGBTQ plus author is a really easy category for me, but I want to do one of the categories that I don't usually interact with as much. So I want to try to find bisexual or asexual or intersex. And the tricky part is that it's the author that should identify as LGBTQ plus. So I know there's a book with asexual representation called Let's Talk About Love by Claire Can. I haven't really been able to find much online about Claire Can's sexual identity, I guess is the way you would put it, because she seems to be a kind of introverted author, doesn't put a lot out there, and I respect that. So I want to make sure I don't just pick a book because the subject matter fits the category. I want to make sure the author fits. So I'm going to look into that a little more. But if you have recommendations for an author who would meet the bisexual, intersex, or asexual prompt, please let me know in the description box or comment section down below. I'm thinking Let's Talk About Love, but I need to make sure it actually fits the prompt. Staff pick, I am going to figure out at some point. I have some recommendations from last year that would fit. So that's one I'm going to wait and see on. And it can be from a bookstore other than Montana Book Company, but I'm going to try to stick with them anyway. Indigenous author. I think for this one, I want to do what was my intention for this category last year, which is do an Indigenous author in Australia, because that is an area I would like to expand my horizons a little more and try to experience. I originally wanted to put The Yield by Tara June Lynch in this category last year, and I ended up moving it to a different category, which was a book set south of the equator. But that's what I would love to do for this category this year. Author biography or memoir, I really want to read Logical Family by Armistead Maupin, and this would be a good excuse for me to do that. Latinx author, I haven't decided which one I'm going to put in there yet. Same for debut title 2022. I feel like there are a lot of different ways I could go with that one. Book of poetry by a BIPOC author. I immediately thought of Amanda Gorman, but part of me wonders if that's like an obvious choice. So I might do Homie by Danez Smith. I've heard really good things about that one. I'll think about it. Amanda Gorman is the front runner right now, but we'll see how it goes. A book set primarily in a bookstore or library, my immediate thought was The Sentence by Louise Erdrich, so that would be a good fit for that. Classic literature by a Black author. This is where my Pulitzer project might come into play. I had been talking to someone about reading Beloved this year, so if we do that, that's what I would put there. If we don't, we'll probably find another book that would fit for that. Queer retelling of fairy tale, folklore, or myth. Again, the link to the Book Riot article is down below. I'm thinking of either Nama by Sarah Blake or Ash by Melinda Lowe. Ash is on Scribd, so that is probably the one that I'm going to go to. And Melinda Lowe just won the National Book Award for Young People's Literature for Last Night at the Telegraph Club, so natural fit. Book whose sequel releases in 2022. I actually got my idea for this category from Charlie from the Montana Book Company because they recommended A Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Harrow as an option for the queer retelling of fairy tale, folklore, or myth. And when they mentioned it, they said that there's a sequel coming this year. So bam, A Spindle Splintered is on Scribd, and it's like 3 hours, so perfect. Guilty pleasure read. I don't believe in guilty pleasures, but I'm probably going to do a gay romance at some point this year. So that would be a natural fit for that category. Social sciences or history book by a Black author. I'm thinking How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith is a natural fit for that, so that's probably what I will do. A book set in or about Africa, fiction or nonfiction. I have a hold at the library for Gravelheart by Abdul Razak Gurnah, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature last year. So if that becomes available, I would probably do that one for this category. Otherwise, if I do end up reading The Promise, it fits two categories. It would be Booker Prize long list or winner, or it would fit this category as well. So that would be a backup plan for this category. Classic literature written by a woman. Again, my Pulitzer project is probably a perfect fit for this category. Haven't made a decision about which one I would do, but we shall see. A book you've been intimidated to read. I put down the one that's like the truest answer to this, which is Gravity's Rainbow, which is sort of a supplement to my Pulitzer Prize project. It was the book that the jury recommended for the Pulitzer Prize the year that it was published. And the Pulitzer board thought that it was obscene and refused to give a prize that year rather than give it to Gravity's Rainbow. So it would be a supplement to my Pulitzer Prize project, and it is definitely a book that I have been intimidated to read. There are a lot of other ways I could approach this category if I just really don't want to read Gravity's Rainbow, but that is the one that I put down for now. We're almost done. Montana author, a couple of different options. Virginia Reeves she's the author that I used to fit this category last year, and she has another book, which is available on Scribd, actually. So I could do that. Or I could do the Thomas McGuane collection of short stories that I had been thinking about as an option for that category last year. And the bonus for that is that it would also fit the short story category if I got a different Montana author in as well. So different book by an author you read for last year's challenge. I mentioned Virginia Reeves already. Lots of different ways I could meet that. So I'm not going to go with it. Actually, I wonder do you get a free pass if you didn't do this challenge last year? Interesting question. I'll have to check with Montana Book Company. 2 books in the series. Sue Grafton, easy fit for that if I don't do anything else. But again, if I did The Parable of the Sower and the next book in that series, or if I read the sequel to A Spindle Splintered, I've met it right there. I also had a thinking that I could incorporate my Pulitzer Prize project because there are 2 John Updike books that won the Pulitzer Prize, and both of them are in his Rabbit Angstrom series. And I've been really reluctant to get started on that. So this might be a good kick in the pants to do that. If I decide I want to read John Updike this year, I don't know that I do, but I have to at some point. A book about or by an author who has mental illness, chronic illness, or disability. Well, Brian from Bookish sent me a copy of The Collected Schizophrenias by Esme Wei-Jun Wang. That's what I'm thinking right now. Magical realism, going back to my most anticipated books of 2022, The Boy with a Bird in His Chest by Emmy Lund is tagged as magical realism. So that is probably what I'm going to do for that. Banned book, lots to choose from. I'm going to try to let that one happen organically. A book by an AAPI or Asian author. I put The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. I feel like that's a really obvious choice, but I have been wanting to read that book for more than 20 years and I have not gotten around to it. So this would probably be a good excuse to do it. I love this next category. It turns out this book sucked. Obviously, you can't make a plan for that book, but I kind of can't wait to see what ends up fitting this category for me. A book from last year's TBR stack. Again, so many different options. I've already mentioned a couple that I wanted to read last year and could use for this. So any number of those would apply for this category. This dystopian / apocalypse fiction feels like real life. I don't have a plan for this one. I might just talk to Charlie and get a recommendation because I know that is their wheelhouse. So we'll see how that goes. Now, the next category is an author you like recommended it. My immediate thought is Nobody's Magic by Destiny O. Birdsong, because the blurb for that book comes from Disha Philyaw, who is the author of My Beloved, The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. So that seems like it would be a natural fit for this. I don't know if an author blurb or like an author because it's something that the publisher uses, but I'm going to count it for now at least. If I don't do that, Don't Cry For Me, which is another book from my most anticipated of 2022, was recommended by Jessamine Ward, so that would work. Memoir and essays and poetry, I don't have an answer for that one right now. I'm going to have to think about it. A reread, too many different options, but I could go with my Pulitzer Prize project for that one because there are a lot of books that I read for it that would probably reread. Gilead by Marilyn Robinson, perfect example. Cover made you buy it. I can't plan for that one. That's something that is just going to happen. The final category on the 2022 reading challenge is true crime, and that is going to be a difficult one because for me, I don't do a lot of true crime anymore. I feel like a lot of true crime can be kind of lurid and it kind of glorifies the person who perpetrates the crime at the expense of the victim of the crime and the victim's families. So when I do true crime, it usually has to have some kind of a different approach to it. Like last year, I read Last Call, which is mostly from the perspective of the victims. The same thing with The Five by Hallie Rubenhold. I really liked both of those books a great deal. So I don't have one in mind that would come from that approach. I'm sure it's possible to find one. So if you have recommendations, please let me know. But I know there was a book that was part of an interview, I think on the New York Times Book Reviews podcast. It was The Case of the Murderous Dr. Cream. It sounded really interesting. I don't think it has that approach that I prefer with a true crime book, but if all else fails, that would probably be a good option for that. So I would love to hear what you think about any of my reading intentions for 2022. I would love to hear what you are planning to do for the Montana Book Company Reading Challenge. Again, this is just my kind of scratch sheet that I'm using. It is not what I'm actually going to use. I'm going to have a more formal one that I can fill out as I go, especially since I spilled yogurt on this, which is kind of gross. But anyway, I'd love to hear what you're going to do for this if you are going to participate. If you have other ideas and ways of approaching these topics, let me know in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.